take the first step in faith. You don't have to see the whole staircase, just take the first step. Dr. Charlotte Broaden has been a professor of international business and organizational leadership at the Southern New Hampshire University since 2006. She earned a Bachelor's of Arts in Interpersonal Communications and Management from Marquette University in 1977. Her master's degree and her doctoral degree both are from New Hampshire as well, Southern New Hampshire University. Her master's was in international business, and her doctorate degree was in business administration in international business and finance. Dr. Broaden has over 20 years of corporate experience in strategic decision making and overseeing human resources systems, both domestically and internationally. She has a broad industry experience covering steel, water meter, and labor manufacturing industry. She has traveled extensively, and she's interested in least developing and emerging markets with a particular focus in researching African nations and the development of small business on a global basis. I know there's a lot, but she's pretty special. I'm almost done though. She has developed courses in international entrepreneurship and has assisted students in starting their own business. She has taught in Dubai and in Athens, Greece. She's a certified global business professional through the North American Small Business International Trade Educators. She's a member of the Academy of Management, Academy of Global Business, Academy of International Business, a board member of International Chamber for Economic Development, and who is who among American teachers. It's with pleasure that I introduce to you Dr. Charlotte Broaden.
Welcome. Well, thank you for having me here at Tiffin University. I'm honored to be here on Martin Luther King Day and sharing this message about global education with you. So I had a most enjoyable time meeting your faculty, some of your students, and I'm glad to see that there was such a nice turnout. So I hope that I can bring you a message about global education that's going to have some effect on your decision making now and possibly in the future. Paula did such a great job talking about my background, but let me just fill in a few more of the blank spaces. I'm originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Decided to go to Marquette University to study management and interpersonal communications. When I was an undergrad, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. You know, I kind of looked at different majors, I actually tried different programs, and I finally settled on that. When I graduated in 1977, my focus was getting a job. You know, I needed to put money in my pocket. And jobs back in 1977 were a little bit more easy to attain at that point in time. Because as you heard Paula say, I didn't go back to school and get my master's until 22 years later. So I worked in the corporate world for 22 years gaining experience before I really figured out what did I want to do in life. So I talked to some students today and we talked about that. Sometimes we don't always know what we want to do, but we try things until we find something that works. International business works for me, and so that's why I want to talk to you today. My master's is in international business, and the reason why I chose that, after my last assignment, I decided that I really wanted a career in international, but I needed a little bit more academic horsepower to feel comfortable in the marketplace. So that's why I went back and got a degree. And the interesting thing was, once I got there, we were starting a doctoral program. Now, I was very honest with students this morning when I talked to them. I'm a business person. Spent 22 years in business. When I went back to school, I was looking at students who looked like you. That was intimidating to be an adult going back into the classroom with students who had just got their bachelor's who were also going into a master's program. So you might be feeling intimidated going into programs, but just think about an adult who had been out of school for 22 years. It was frightening. I was out of my element again. I was back to taking exams. Wasn't sure how that was going to work. But I stayed on to get my doctorate in international finance. And a lot of people have asked me the question, why did you switch from management to finance? And I really want to make that point here today. No matter what business, no matter what discipline you're in, whether it's marketing, sports management, law enforcement, you need to know something about the finances of the organization you're going to work for. You should be making decisions on where you're going to spend your time, your career, based on the financial health of that organization. I'm sure you have all seen the number of businesses that have failed. I can talk about the Enrons and the Adelphias and the companies that have gone out of business. People who have lost their 401ks because they didn't understand the financial health of an organization. So I say to students, finance may be tough, but it's something that's going to stick with you all of your life. So whether you do a degree in it or you take some courses in it, you got to understand something about finance if you're going to be in business, either working for a corporation or, more importantly, if you start your own business. You don't want to rely on someone else. So that was my transition into going into business. So my work experience. I've always worked for multinational corporations, corporations that have multiple locations outside of the home country. The first company I worked for, we had as few as 2 locations. The last company that I worked for, we were in 35 different countries. So we were managing business all over the world. My role in the companies was always a dual role. I specialized in human resources. So I have hired thousands of employees across the 3 businesses that I've worked in. Everything from executives to people who work in the plant. Part of my career was doing college recruiting. So I spent 10 years going on college campuses hiring people who look just like you in this audience today. Finding out what are the skills that they've obtained and why are those skills necessary to work in our company. So that's why I feel a little comfortable talking to student groups about getting a global education. Because I know what businesses are looking for. So in addition to working domestically, I had the pleasure and the opportunity to work internationally. And it's probably the thing that changed my life. My first international assignment, I was located in Toronto, Canada, and I had responsibilities for 2 facilities there and a facility in France. So I got to travel and see a little bit of the world and see how business was done. I've been traveling for my entire professional career, but now I was living in a different culture. And even though Canada is right across the border, Canada is not the 51st state of the United States, and Canadians have their own culture, and they're very proud of it. And they want visitors to understand that. I also worked in Dubai academically. I taught in Dubai. And as I was sharing with some of your professors, I went to Dubai on September 10th of 2001. The next day, the world had changed for the U.S., and I was in the heart of the Middle East. And that's an experience that I'll never forget. I couldn't even imagine what people were going through here. My family was worried that I hadn't even been in Dubai for 24 hours, and the world had changed. And my colleagues at Southern New Hampshire University were worried that I was over there, and what was I going to do? And they wanted me back, but I stayed. I'd made a commitment to go there and teach. And no matter what I was feeling and thinking, I had an obligation to fulfill, and I stayed. And I still have friends in Dubai today. As a matter of fact, in March, I'm going to be taking students in my class to go visit Dubai. So sometimes we don't know what opportunities are going to present themselves or how we're going to deal with them. But the one thing I try and say to students is, look at an opportunity as an adventure and see what you can get from it that's going to be life-changing for you. I've also taught in Greece, and so I enjoy the experience of seeing different cultures and how they relate to each other. Paula also talked about, I have a certification as an international trade professional, and I'm going to be talking about the importance of certifications in professional organizations. But I got this certification because I wanted to know more about how business is done around the world, why business is done around the world. My dissertation was on foreign direct investments. Why are multinationals investing abroad? What does it mean to me here in the United States and to my family and my colleagues? Why do they make these investments? Where are they making these investments? You're going to be working soon. You're going to be making investments in 401k plans for your future. Most 401k plans have a global component. You're going to want to know where your money's going and why, and who's making smart decisions for you. So a lot of this has to do with international trade. And so I'll talk about why this certification is important to me and how I use it for my students traveling. I kind of put up a list of countries that I've traveled to. I've traveled for business. I travel for pleasure. This past semester, I was on sabbatical. And so since September, I have been on 2 continents, and I've traveled to 4 countries. I went to Malaysia to build a program for my undergraduate students in international entrepreneurship, to do a partnership with our school in Malaysia. I went to Vietnam to attend the wedding of one of my graduate students who invited me. I just recently got back last Monday from Africa. I went to South Africa simply on vacation because I wanted to be in the country with the death of Mandela. I wanted to have that experience of what's going on in South Africa and what was the impact that Nelson Mandela had on a nation and a world. And then I left South Africa and I went to Botswana because I was presenting a paper at the University of Botswana on regional trade groups and foreign direct investment in Africa, looking at investment patterns. Because Africa has become the latest hotspot for companies to invest in. They are the largest continent with minerals that are untapped resources. Botswana's economy alone is based on their diamond mines. They have one of the largest deposits of unmined diamonds in the world. And they're building their economy on that. University of Botswana has 26,000 students who go there. And guess what? Education in Botswana is free for those who pass the exams and qualify to go to university. So they need financial resources to support the best and the brightest minds in the world. So I'm going to talk a little bit about competition in a minute. So when I decided I was going to have this talk, I had to think about, what am I going to tell students about a global education? What's going to be important? So I decided, what are the things that I am most obsessed about when I think about globalization and global education? So what's the first thing I'm obsessed about? Getting students to understand that a global education is important. The second thing that I'm obsessed about, if I'm going to be a faculty member and I'm going to teach students to get a global education, I've got to make some changes. So what am I going to do to change my courses that's going to help students be more marketable in a global environment? And then the third thing that's important to me, because I am a business professional, is students have to realize the importance of communication. You know, we live in a digital age and everybody uses shorthand when we do text messaging, but the business world doesn't operate that way. They need students coming in with good writing and oral skills. And one of the things that I've been working on with students, because it's important, is you need to get something out of your writing. So I have an obsession now, a mission to help my students become published authors, and I'm going to talk about what we've been able to do with that. So my first obsession, getting students to get this global education. So I'm going to give you a couple facts here. There's about 4,500 colleges and universities in the United States right now. Colleges just like Tiffin, colleges like Southern New Hampshire University. Let's just assume that on average, 1,000 students graduate every year from these colleges and universities. They may graduate more, they may graduate less. But in May of each year, about 4,500,000 students are going into the workforce. They're your competitors. And guess what? That's just from colleges in the United States. We're not even talking about colleges and universities on a global basis. So the question I have for you is, how are you going to stand out in the crowd of that 4,500,000 who are going to come out the year that you graduate? What's going to make some employer pick you? See, that was the thing when I was doing college recruiting. I would see hundreds of students on campuses. We'd have 6 openings. What was going to make me pick those 6 students from the hundreds of students that I would interview? Because everybody's coming out with the same kind of degrees. People are getting similar grades. What's going to make a difference for the organization I work for? So I want to give you a couple reasons why a global education is important. There's really 3 things. It's going to help you gain some professional advantages. There are some academic advantages that can be gleaned from getting a global education. But there's also some personal advantages that I hope students will find in pursuing this kind of career option. So if we look at the professional advantages, you're going to have a global consciousness to stay on the cutting edge of your profession, whatever it is. Things change rapidly today. All of the technology does not reside in the U.S. New systems, new processes, new products, new services are being created all over the world. You've got to be able to know how to compete with that. I challenge my students to read and listen to the global news. What happens in Africa is going to affect you here. What happens in Russia is going to affect somebody in Vietnam. We're getting ready for the Olympics. There's been all kind of news going on about security, about the economy. When you get in business, what kind of conversations are you going to be having with your colleagues? If you want to impress somebody for that promotion, you're going to have to be able to talk to them in the language they're accustomed to. And you've got to be knowledgeable. You can get an advantage in cross-cultural consumer values, global trends, and more importantly, what's going on in terms of political and economic issues that face all of us today. When I think about academic advantages, many colleges have study abroad. And study abroad isn't just for languages anymore. You know, that's how the program started out. Now it's about getting a knowledge of how your counterparts are operating and thinking in a global environment. They want the best jobs just like you. So it's important to know, what do they know? Every year, the United States is flooded with students coming from abroad to learn from our systems. We need to be flooding other countries with students going abroad, learning about their economies. Because guess what? That's where we're investing. That's where US dollars are going. We're investing abroad. Multinational corporations right now are getting anywhere from 45 to 55% of their revenues from the global environment. They are not getting their revenues in the domestic market. They need you going to those markets, finding those opportunities to make their revenues grow. And finding international employment, whether it's temporary or whether it's permanent, whether it's summer jobs, internships, or full-time positions. These are some of the things that you can begin building on during your academic career. So let's talk a little bit about personal advantages. And I think there are 4. Personal growth. One of the reasons why I started traveling was I just wanted to see different places around the world. I wanted to be in somebody else's backyard. I wanted to taste the food that they had. I wanted to see their houses. I wanted to see their celebrations. It's that personal curiosity that I think was important. Then there's this intercultural knowledge and skills. The companies that I worked for not only were investing abroad, we had diversified our workplace. Now we had people from foreign countries working here in the US. I needed to know how to relate to them. I was setting policy in our companies. So I had to make sure that I could adapt and help them adapt to our work environment. An enhanced global perspective. I was beginning to see opportunities that I didn't even know about when I went to school. See, no one talked to me when I was an undergraduate about getting a global education. Opportunity in the US was good, so nobody really thought about it. And as I said to some students at breakfast this morning, one of the downfalls of corporations is we grew big and we grew fast and the money was coming in and nobody thought it was going to end. And then recessions hit. And I listened to a student today who told me his father was downsized from 2 jobs he was working. And in some corporations where family members all worked at the same company, they all lost their jobs. It wasn't a very pleasant environment to be in. The corporations didn't want to let people go, but they were not in a position, based on finances, to do any better. And so companies started investing abroad. And then there's just professional development. And this is something I like students to think about. One of the reasons why I got some of the opportunities that I have in my career is I was willing to step out, take the chance, take an international assignment, and my reward in many cases was getting promoted to higher jobs within my company. Because they looked at me as an asset at that point in time. I brought something to the table that my colleagues didn't do. It's not that I was smarter than my colleagues. I wasn't better than my colleagues. I did something different than my colleagues. And that's what I really want to talk to you about is, you're going to come out with that $4,500,000. What are you going to do that's different, that's going to make you stand out among the crowd? There's a lot of research that's been done on global talent. So now we kind of come to a conflict here. I just told you that 4,500,000 students are coming out. That's a huge supply of human capital. And that's not even counting the global human capital coming from colleges and universities. So why are we talking about a global talent shortage? What's wrong with this picture? If we've got all these people coming out of colleges and universities and they've got skills, why are companies not able to fill their jobs? Manpower, Inc., for the past 10 years has been doing a survey on global shortage. They go around the world to find why are companies having difficulty filling jobs. One of the biggest things in May, I talked to my students the other day before I left. And I said, every May I get students come to my office. Dr. Broaden, I can't find a job. Help me find a job. They're at the end of their career. The time to find a job is not in May when you're coming out of school with 4,500,000 other people looking for a job. The time to look for a job and do something about it is now. It's now. I'm not going to go through the results. I'm going to leave this presentation, and I'm sure your faculty and Dr. Perry Noss will share the link, and you can look at this survey, and you can go back and look at previous surveys. But it's an interesting look at, we've got jobs, we've got human capital, we're not bringing the two together. What do we all need to do to make that change? So why are companies finding it difficult to fill these jobs? They feel there's a lack of available applicants or no applicants applying. Do students know where to go look for jobs? How do you do your job search? Lack of technical competencies. You know, the place to build technical competencies is right here in college. Your faculty will work hard to help you build these skills, but you've got to work with them. It's not simply a matter of taking a test anymore. When you go into an employment interview, you've got to be able to tell an employer how you're going to transfer the knowledge you got into a skill set they can use. That's a key activity now. And we know that competencies are changing rapidly because they're changing with technology. Because when you leave Tiffin, how are you going to keep your skills up to date? What are you going to do? Because it's not Tiffin's responsibility at that point. It's going to be yours. Lack of experience. Students say this all the time. I can't get a job because I don't have the experience. So I'm going to talk about some ways where you can gain some experience while you're in college to help you qualify for these jobs. Lack of employability skills or soft skills. Interpersonal skills, team building. Let me ask a question here. I always like to ask this of my students. I want to see a show of hands. How many students like to do group projects? Show of hand. About a quarter of the students raise their hand. See, this is what I tell students in America. We spend probably 16 years of your life telling you to be an individual, focusing on individual achievement, working on your own. We reward that handsomely, and then we trick you. We throw you out in the business world and we say work as a team. How are you going to do that if we don't spend the time helping you to do that? So a lot of schools are realizing, talking with the business world, we got to change that model. So we start doing group projects. And I know none of you would say this, because I'm looking at the audience. I know none of you would talk about group projects and say, I don't want to do a group project because my team members don't do what they're supposed to do. I know that would never happen here at Tiffin University. I don't want to do a group project because I don't want to delegate because I know the right way to do that. I know nobody at Tiffin University would say that. I don't want to do a group project because it's too hard to get in touch with my team members. Even though you all are the most adequate at using technology, when you want to find somebody, you're able to find them. But I know that would never happen here at Tiffin University. So we've got to get students to invest in soft skills, building leadership, building delegation skills, working as teams. That's what the business world needs. Perfecting your writing skills. Those are the soft skills. So you got the technical skills and you got the soft skills, and you got to develop both while you're here in college. So we're trying our best to give you those opportunities. People are looking for more pay than is offered. You know, salaries are market-based. It's based on supply and demand. My two older brothers are engineers, and I remember when my brother was in college, one brother's 3 years older than me. Engineers were in demand. All you had to do was say you were going to be an engineer, and people were throwing money at you. So he became an engineer. I didn't know what I wanted to do in college. My parents were like, okay, this is a stretch. So I went into management. Guess what? Things are cyclical. The market became flooded with engineers. Everybody realized engineers were going to make a lot of money. Everybody wanted to be an engineer. By the time all those engineers graduated, there were so many of them flooding the market. Guess what happened to salaries? They went down. But guess what? Everybody wasn't running into management where I was. And guess what happened with that salary? Started going out. My brother's like, what's up with this? I've got technical skills. You went around and took all these soft courses, and now you're making more money than me. Things are cyclical in the marketplace. So if you want more pay, you've got to bring something to the table that employers want, particularly in a competitive market. Candidates are unwilling to work part-time or contingent roles. The marketplace has changed. Companies are not hiring at the same rate that they did before. They're hiring part-time employees. But here's the thing. They're using those part-time employees to qualify them to be their future full-time employees. Sometimes you got to take the part-time jobs to get to the full-time prize. That's just the nature of the beast right now. So don't shy away from this. And then finally, if companies are getting 45 to 55% of their revenues from emerging economies, it's saying that they're going to need people to understand those locations in the world. Are you willing to make an investment in your career to go to some of these locations to reap those benefits in the future? So let me try and give you some suggestions on how to deal with some of these difficulties. Lack of available applicants. First of all, searching for a job is a job. Jobs don't come to you. You got to find the jobs, because remember, think about all your competitors who are looking for the job that you want. Because there are so many applicants now, it used to be the Sunday newspapers. When I was coming out of school, Sunday newspapers used to be this thick, and most of it was with employment ads. You ever look in the paper now and see how many jobs are listed in papers? Not very many, is it? But I just told you there's a shortage. So where are companies advertising for these jobs? Where are they going to find the people for those jobs? Well, one of the things that students can do, and we need to thank the federal government for this, even though they have made massive cutbacks, one of the things the Department of Education has done, particularly because they're interested in this whole global phenomenon, they created a depository of international information that is free. I don't usually give things away for free. I'm a business person, but I'm giving you something for free today. Your tax dollars, your parents' tax dollars, my tax dollars, your future tax dollars have gone into the research of a depository called Global Edge. The U.S. Department of Education has made that site resident on Michigan State University's campus, where they employ people to get the most up-to-date information on jobs around the world. The only thing you need to do to get access to that is to use your Tiffin email address that ends in edu. You can't access that site with Gmail. You cannot access that site with Hotmail to get into the restricted areas. You can only get to the jobs by using your Tiffin University email. I know students don't like to use their school email. They like to communicate with their other email addresses. But for this, dig up your email address and go on and log on to Global Edge. Because if you're looking for internships, if you're looking for summer jobs, if you're looking for full-time positions with organizations around the world, this is one of the best sites to start with. Now my students, I told my students on Thursday I was coming here to talk. And they said, Dr. Broaden, are you going to be giving away any of these secrets? So you can't tell anybody at SNHU that I've talked about this, because they're going to be upset. Because they're in that 4,500,000 students coming out in May. So they don't exactly want competitors to know what they know. But I've got an obligation to tell you about things that are important. LinkedIn, how many of you have LinkedIn accounts? So again, about a third of the group. I'm telling you that one of the best sites for finding out about jobs is going on LinkedIn. But here's the thing about LinkedIn, the way the system works. You can't just create a LinkedIn account and then ask people to connect with you. Because the way LinkedIn sends you jobs is based on you filling out those profiles. The more detailed that you look at those profiles, the more you're going to get out of it. So that's something to think about. There's another website here, International Organization Careers, and again, the website is there. Wonderful site for students to get information. Lack of technical competencies. I have to challenge students to think about your field. Outside of the classroom, talk to professionals in the field, get as much information as you can to find out what are the trends. Your faculty is only going to be able to tell you so much. You've got to do some work to accommodate that. I'm going to speed this up a little bit. Summer jobs. Look at internships, do service learning, volunteer. Find companies in your area that have international locations and ask them what activities go on there. Information is free. Work on these soft skills. Go into these activities in your classroom with the intent of learning and developing those skills and being able to talk about them in the workplace. How are you going to get more pay? How many of you are bilingual? See, this is a problem in the U.S. We have not put enough emphasis on being bilingual. I have international students who come here, and guess what? They go into hospitals. And hospitals right now are a prime source for hiring students because they need help as the demographics of the communities change and they've got to service populations. Students who have those language skills can go in there just as interpreters. I will tell you that interpreters make a lot of money. Some students supplementing their income by providing those services on call. They don't even have to take full-time jobs. So it's an opportunity that's out there. Get an internship in your field. I know, so I talked to some students who have internships. And then I'm going to talk about publishing articles. Unwilling to work part-time jobs. Sometimes you got to start out small to get the big jobs. There's no way around that. So if there's an opportunity, take it. That's one more thing you've done that your competitors haven't done. Undesirable locations. You know, the world is changing. Emerging economies are developing. You'll be surprised at how developed some economies are. I want students to think about the Peace Corps, because the Peace Corps has changed over time. And guess what? You do 2 years of volunteerism, they guarantee you a job. They find you a job. But also on the Peace Corps website, there are full-time jobs where you don't even have to volunteer. They're looking for students. So go on their website and look at their jobs. They've got tons of jobs all over the world that are out there. My second obsession, I'm going to do this pretty quick. What am I doing? I'm being paid as a faculty member, not to sit there and lecture to you, but to help you market. So I incorporate service learning into my classes, where my students actually go out and work with organizations in the international community to learn about these different cultures. Every society has those opportunities. Look for them. Part of my job is to go out and develop business and academic partnerships. I went to Malaysia because I have a New Hampshire entrepreneur who wants to expand his business from Singapore to Malaysia. He's going to let my students do his global business plan for him. These are my undergraduates. I've got to go out there and get the partnerships. My students have to deliver on this. So these are things, this is something you can begin to look at with your faculty. Here's my third obsession. I told you good writing is important. Undergraduates becoming published authors. Any of you ever think about being a published author? Getting your name out in perpetuity? Well, that's one of my big obsessions, and so I have 3 of my undergraduate students who are solo published authors. They didn't publish their research with me. They did their own research. And there are journals out there directed just at undergraduates. I particularly focus on the journal Global Business and Communities, because these are my 3 undergraduate students. I teach doctoral classes, so I try and shame my doctoral students by telling them that my undergraduates are published authors. They're going to come out with their degrees. Jeff and Amanda have already graduated. Jeff wrote on Beyond the Brick, Looking to Africa for Opportunity. His paper was so good, they accepted it without revision. Amanda wrote on Women Taking Over, Welcome to 21st Century Business. She looked at women executives around the world. What did they do to become the executives in these different countries? And the last author, Alex, he's a senior this year, he was a junior when he published on smart cities and smart infrastructure, 2 megatrends affecting global societies. So I challenge you to think about separating yourself from the crowd by being a published author. If my students can do it, you can too. So how do you get started? Start right here at Tiffin. I've been on your website. There are fantastic opportunities here. You got to talk to the people here. Dr. Perry Noss told me about one of her classes that's just fantastic in diversity. You got to take these classes. You got to do the things that your university is providing opportunities in. Use some of the resources that I've given you. Just check them out. Find community organizations with international links. Think about study abroad. This last one, think about becoming proficient in a language. Any questions? Thoughts? I'm not taking complaints today. I get enough of that when I go back to SNHU. The last thing I want to do, I learned this in Africa. When I was at the conference, they did something called a circle of thanks. I thank you, Tiffin, for inviting me here today to talk about my passion. I love international business. I love being in a global environment. I love to see you somewhere in a global location in the future. So I was in Botswana, I told you, and so one of the things that they did in this circle of thanks is they gave a gift. So I'd like to ask Dr. Sharon Perry-Noss, who invited me here, to come join me up here on the stage. So I just want to give to you a token of thanks for being a great colleague and inviting me here today to share my story with your students. Thank you.